So what is RVT blending? RVT blending is you're just taking textile data and applying it into another material. So it is using your GPU to do it, so it's really inexpensive. So you can see here that since I'm painting on my landscape, it is changing dynamically on my rock material, and it's giving this really nice blend, this transition. This method isn't new, it was implemented in 4.23, and it's something that I learned from Quixel's demo. They have a blog right here that you can check out their link. There's a lot more information and details on how to implement it into your scene. I just wanted to create a condensed version video of it. So you might be asking, how do we sample the landscape and project it into the object? So we use something called a virtual texture volume that we place over the top of our landscape, and this is going to take a snapshot of whatever our landscape, all the material properties, and convert it into a RVT texture. So like I said, it's going to capture base color, roughness, normal map, spec, and then we can project it back onto our object, onto our rock, to help that transition here. So you can see here that I have an in-game. The first thing that we're going to want to do, and I'm going to start this from scratch, is go under our project settings, struggling to find it, and it's on top. Yep. So we're going to search under project settings. Under all settings, we're going to type in virtual texture. If you're past 4.23, it should be available. So we're going to enable virtual texture support. Have this checked off. It's going to ask you to restart your engine. We're going to say yes. We're going to make two materials, MRVT blend, which is going to be our object, and MRVT landscape test, or not the test, but so our landscape material and material for our object. It can be a master, so you can apply it on a bunch of different meshes. So here I'm opening up my landscape. I have a bunch of tilers already set up. These tiling textures are they're all world lined, they're all just condensed into material functions here. I have a couple of inputs exposed so I can change the tiling rate, the hue, the normal intensity. I'm just gonna kind of like fly through this really fast. Nothing special, as you can see. It's just all of my maps just linked up normally, and just a couple of inputs. If you don't want to condense it into a material function and you just want to compile it all into a make material attribute, which works just as fine. Like I said, these are all world lines, so I have my texture object for my base color plugged into the texture input, and I'm using a 4 vector parameter to control the hue, plugging that into base color, and then 256 for the texture coordinate size, and an absolute world position for world position I'm plugging in. So I'm just breaking it out, and I'm plugging in each map for the base color, the normal, and I have a flat normal for the normal intensity if you want to set that up too. And then for my black and white maps, so I have my roughness coming out of the red channel, and I'm multiplying that to control the intensity. And then here's also for my height map. So this is going to be controlling the tessellation. I have this masking in the alpha channel and multiplying that, and then also multiplying it against the vertex normal world space, which I plug. So if you don't want to use a material function, you plug this into that layer, and then you take your height map right here, and then you plug that into the height blend, which right there. So you just make that for each tiling texture that you have, and it should be good. So here I'm going to add a landscape layer blend. So this is going to think of it as like an interpolation node or blend node, and you can add in a bunch of different layers as such, and we're going to name them the same as our tiling textures here. So I have a layer for sand and a layer for rubble, rock, pebbles, and I'm gonna have it a height blend, and I do have that output exposed because once you have that height blend, you can have these really nice threshold blends in between. So you can see here the peaks, the whites of my height map are appearing first, so it just looks a little bit more organic. So we have our layer blend right here, and we're just going to go ahead and connect our pins, and we're going to name them properly. Once you apply your material, it is going to ask to make a landscape layer info, and we're just going to make a separate folder for that. But so after that, we make the landscape layer blend, we break the material attributes, and then we're going to connect everything. So first I want to turn on tessellation, and we can uncheck crack displacement. We are going to go ahead and search for a second output, which is a runtime virtual texture output. And this is what we're going to connect everything else into. And if you notice that we can leave masked or mask that input alone, and then also we have something called world height. This, we're going to grab a absolute world position and then mask only in the Z value here. And then we're going to use a material parameter collection, which, if you don't know what it is, a material parameter collection is just a parameter or a variable that you can pull out in multiple different materials. You find a material parameter collection by searching in the asset library and then clicking and dragging your material parameter collection into your material. This is basically the same as this, or you can also make it a 4-vector. It's just that if, let's say, I had a value of 0.5 in this scalar parameter and I wanted to use this same scalar parameter value in 5 different materials, I can just do that using a collection. So if I open this up, you can see that I added a array which has a variable of 110. So that's 110 Unreal units on the Z-axis. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug this into world height. And we're going to also use this variable for our material for the rock. Once that's done and you have all of this set up, you're pretty much good to go. You can hit apply and the landscape material should compile. But before we can do that, we should go ahead and create our landscape in-game. So I'm not trying to make anything too big, it's just a 7x7 quad landscape. And then I'm assigning our material here, and you can see that the layers are already being read in our details panel here. So I'm doing a non-weighted blend, this way that we can just paint on top of each layer. The value of our landscape is at 100 in world space. So that's where we got that value. Filing shaders for a little bit. So we have right now our 4 different blends. So we have sand, we have rubble, and each layer that you paint on, it's going to have to compile. So before I start tweaking with the blend material for my object here, I have to throw in world space, I have to throw in like a bounding box to take a snapshot of our landscape here. The volume is called Runtime Virtual Texture Volume. So actually first I'm going to have to make 2 textures, Runtime Virtual Textures. We need to capture our material properties and as well as our height for our landscape. So here I'm just going to name the runtime virtual textures, and then once we get those 2 textures, we're going to go ahead and place them into our landscape as well as our runtime virtual texture volume. See right here, I have RVT material properties 02. So this is going to be my base color, normals, roughness, and then my RVT material height is just going to capture my height. So if we double click this and open it, it is going to give us a couple different things that we can tweak. The resolution of our virtual texture in tiles. So each tile of our landscape, it's going to capture at a certain resolution. See right here under layout, it's telling us what it is capturing. I'm going to now open my height. And this is what we're going to have to change. So for our height, it is by default set to base color normal, so we're going to turn this to world height. So go ahead and hit save. Let's go ahead and save that. And then once we have that, we are going to click on our landscape, and then we're going to plug in these virtual textures into our landscape so it has something to take a snapshot of. Under virtual texture, once we click our landscape, we're going to add in two different array elements. So 0 and 1, we are going to plug in our material properties, so 2, and then our heights. And here we are going to leave at virtual textures and main pass. So once we have that set up, we can go ahead and grab our virtual texture volume. So we are going to reference the virtual texture that we are using for our landscape and plugging that into the volume here. And we're also going to source the actor that we are using. So we are using this landscape, so you can just use this eyedropper and then place it there. So let's go ahead and increase the size and encase our landscape in this. So probably at a value of like 5,000. So you can see right there it just refreshed and it just took a snapshot. So I'm trying to, you can use the eyedrop to copy over and snap the bounds, copy rotation and copy bounds. So I've personally never had success with this. So there we go. So we kind of set up our landscape, and then now all of the work is kind of being done within our object material. So here we are in the object material, and I'm just looking at my maps, just base color, normal, and then roughness and ambient occlusion. Just really simple. And here I'm going to pull out something called Runtime Virtual Texture Sample. So this is where we're going to take that landscape virtual texture and then click and connect that into our Runtime Virtual Texture Sample here. So you can see right there, that is the result of our snapshot of our landscape. And then this is where we can interpolate or blend these two together. Alright, so we're going to click and drag that into our sample right there, and then we're going to do a couple things. I'm going to pull up another Runtime Virtual Texture Sample, and then I'm also going to sample our height for our terrain. So we have Runtime Virtual Texture Sample for our material properties, and another one for our height. So both of these are going to get interpolated with the macro maps for our asset material or asset textures here. Here I'm just going to comment it out and group it together. So there we are. I'm just going to quickly pull in a lerp. So our runtime is going to go into the B channel, and our asset texture is going to go into the A, or make material attributes here. We are going to have to blend two material attributes together, so I might as well just do this in the beginning. So I'm just going down the line and I'm lerping each one. So now that we connected it into our material, we have our alpha channel open. So I'm going to show you what we're going to plug in. We're going to take our runtime virtual texture and for our world height, and then this is basically what's going to be plugging in our alpha and giving us that blend. We are going to take our world height right here, and we're going to go ahead and also pull out that material parameter collection for our world height, the same collection that we used in our landscape. So I accidentally did multiply, but we're going to be dividing, and then we're going to grab a world position node, and this is where we're going to mask the z-axis, so a component mask with the blue channel. Then we'll subtract it over the top of our texture sample. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a subtract node, and then we're going to go ahead and add a value on top of this, and we're going to attach a scalar parameter. And then from here we're going to divide. This will be our blend length, and then on top of this we're going to add a power, which is going to control the contrast. And then on top of this we're going to add a multiply, and then this will just control the basic intensity of our threshold. You can go ahead and group that what we just made into its own like comment or group and name it the alpha mask. So before we plug it into our interpolate, you have to saturate and then reverse the or excuse me, 1 minus the whole graph right there. So I'm just gonna plug this straight into our lerp, and we're gonna do a little bit more with this, and I'll show you what. But here I'm just grouping it. Okay, if you notice that our preview for our material bottle is looking broken, and that is because we have to do something before we put it into our material. So before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and put in a couple of default values here, and you can kind of tweak with it yourself and see what works in your scene, or just copy what values that I put in. So like I said, we're going to have to make 2 material attributes. We're going to have one with the blend interpolating over the runtime virtual texture. We're going to blend these 2 materials together using a blend material attributes, and we're going to use a so I'm going to plug that into A, and I'm going to plug that into B. And then for the alpha channel, I'm going to take a vertex normal world space and then mask it with the blue and then throw that into the alpha. If you do not do this, and you just plug in the break material attributes straight into the material, it will shade in properly. The material will look broken. So it's a little bit weird. It's almost like you're blending the same texture over the top of itself twice. But like I said, you have to do this. And then there we go. So this is going to just give us a basic blend, basic threshold blend, or RVT blend. And you should already see it in game working. So there we go. So right now we can see it in game, and we can go ahead and tweak with those parameters if we want it to increase the length, if we want to make the fall off a little bit softer, or if we want to make it sharper, we can do that with the contrast. So here I'm just tweaking with the different variables. So you can kind of see right there it's changing in game. And like I said, with RVT, even if you paint on the landscape, it will update dynamically with the material in your object. So here I'm just going to show that off. So under landscape, and I'm going to just paint some different layers. So just like some rubble, and you can see it's automatically changing right there. Let's say I wanted like another layer. I wanted a little bit of breakup between that transition, so we can add another layer on top of this, and we can go and we can search for a random noise layer that you can generate. This could be like a cloud mask or a grunge mask. I'm just going to attach a texture coordinate and multiply it against a parameter so we can control the tiling. But I'm taking this whole chunk right here, and I'm just going to copy this over. So everything past the subtract, so this we're just copying over, and I'm gonna want this grunge layer to be a little bit above our base layer for our RVT blend, just to kind of have a little bit of breakup, right? We just want to, just so we don't have that like sharp seam when it transitions into the terrain. It's a little trick that the Quixel material had added, and I thought it was a really nice way to kind of make it look a little bit better. So I'm just going to multiply this over the top of our grunge map, and then we're going to add this on top. And then we're going to hit it with a saturate. Go ahead and fix that. So there you go. So that's basically our noise mask. And then we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna want to push this a little bit higher, so you can't see it right now. But if I increase the world length, oh, don't forget to change the name of your parameters, because these are still linked with the originals. So that's why nothing was happening. So here I'm changing the name of each of these variables here. I'm just adding noise, hitting save. And then now we should see some sort of change. So there you go. You can kind of see right there that our grunge map is working, and it's adding on top of our original base RVT blend. So it's almost like 2 layers of the RVT, or 2 masks you're kind of like adding on top of each other. And this grunge map can be anything. You can also pump in like a custom curvature map or an ambient occlusion map if you want. That would probably work better. But for right now, I'm just going to keep with the grunge. Alright, so I'm just going to fly through the blend asset graph again. It was kind of a lot, so here I'm just flying through everything that I did, where everything kind of connects. So there we got that RVT blend. Then we have this material attributes blend blending with the RVT blend. Like I said, you are blending. It's almost like you're blending your asset textures twice. So here's the mask for the RVT blend. So the different so we're adding, dividing, adding a power, multiply, then saturate, inverse. And then we're adding that into another blend for our noise layer, which is the exact same thing. Everything past the subtract function. And then we're multiplying that over a grunge texture that we're tiling. So and then we are adding these together, and then after that add, we are saturating it and then plugging that into the alpha mask of our lerp. So I'm showing you right there where everything connects. So once you get that in and you finish up that material, you should be good to go. Go ahead and paint on your landscape, and then just try placing your mesh to see if it works. Also, you can go ahead and try making a master material out of this guy. So in here I can just make an instance. This way, if I wanted to attach a different normal map, a different hue map, so if I wanted to take another rock or apply this on a statue, I can go ahead and do that. I just have to swap out the maps. So hopefully you guys found this useful. Let me know if you want to see something more like this, but that's pretty much it. That's kind of like the basics of how you can get RVT blending with your landscape.